Hey, this is Cream Puff, multi-legend player and host to the Standard and Wild Ladder strategy podcast, Top Deck Kings. However, you are about to listen to Concede. If you haven't bought a kiss into what they are doing over there, then that would be so ridiculous that I need to tell you to keep calm and chive on and core on over and bottom right your listening privileges.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet.
My greeting.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 119 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. My name is Kenny, and I go by KCCO Gamer. And joining us from Gadgets and New York, we have a ridiculous hat.
How good was that Cream Puff intro, though?
It was good.
Amazing.
That was the first time I heard it.
It was great. I was laughing, as you said I would.
I predicted it. I can see the future.
And that other voice you hear is from Karazhan, California. It's Bodicus.
Hey, everybody.
And we have back from the Maelstrom, Louisiana, we have Appa.
I've returned. Hey, everybody. I missed y'all. Y'all are all big old sweethearts. Hello.
Return from the
We missed
Maelstrom
you
sounds
too.
like a bad 80s action movie.
Return from the Maelstrom in a world where Appa left. Now he's back.
Oh, God. I'm scared.
All right, let's move on then. This is, of course, the point where we point out that Concede is supported in a large part by you, the listener. So if you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head on over to patreon.com/CoinConcede. A little bit of a show outline here. We're going to talk about our ladder real quick, then we'll jump into the news. And we have a short tournament section, and then we're going to go into our deck explanations, which is going to be a game, sort of a game. We titled it Same, Tame, or Hall of Fame. And if we have time, maybe we'll go over a question. And we will save the Deck Doctor for another time. Again, I apologize. All right, so ladder this week. I'm going to start with our guest, Appa. Welcome back. Glad to have you.
Just
What have you
put me
been
on
up
the
to?
spot like that. Jeez.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I hit rank 10, and that's basically where I am. I've been like clearing out quests and stuff, and just like trying all the different meta decks, just kind of getting a feel for everything. Unfortunately, I don't have all the cards for the control or Q block decks, so I've just been like grinding out packs and quests every day, trying to get enough dust to make everything. But
What don't you have?
I have enough dust for the Void Lords, but I don't have the cubes or the weapon. So that's like 2,400 dust, I think, that I need. So,
Well, if you have enough, if you're getting close to like the control variant, we'll talk about that probably a little bit.
yeah, that's the one that I'm gonna play first, is because I'm gonna make the Void Lords, and then I think I have everything for that. But
Because you don't need weapon and you don't need cubes. Some of the lists are playing.
I would like to play Q block though, because it seems like it's a ton of fun.
That
At
one
least
is
to play
also-
with, not against.
Yeah.
Yeah. Q block is like, Q block is definitely like, we'll talk about a lot. It's a jack of all trades, where it's right in the middle. There is, I know you like inevitability. There's a list that plays both N'Zoth and Blood Reaver Gul'dan. So if you just like Void Lords upon Void Lords upon Void Lords, there's something to be said for that. And you don't have to play Rin the First Disciple. There are builds that play Rin the First Disciple, like, seriously. So
Yeah, one of my favorite decks of all time was like Anyfin Paladin, and like full on combo Q block feels like Anyfin Paladin. Like whenever you're like comboing people with it. So
yeah,
Actually seems like a pretty good comparison.
I want to get a little taste of that again.
All right, and Bodicus, what about you?
So this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like it's been a kind of a slow month for me, because considering I played so much on the first day of the month in the rat race. But I'm doing pretty well. I'm rank 5 on NA. I recently started playing a lot of the full-on control lock with Rin and everything. I got to Rin away a Raza Priest's last 10 cards, which felt amazing. One of those 10 cards was a Raza, so they conceded after I killed their Velen. And that was pretty sweet because that matchup is atrocious. But I am also rank 7 on Asia. I fell a little bit today, but I've been playing aggro paladin over there without Tarim because I don't yet have Tarim. But other than I have most of the other cards for the deck, and it was doing pretty well for me. But yeah, hopefully this weekend I can make a push to Legend on one or both of the servers, and then start working on trying to get a top 100, even maybe top 50 finish. I can kind of just try leapfrogging both of them. I hear that's what you're supposed to do.
How are you feeling with Call to Arms?
We'll talk about it later.
Spoiler alert, that card good.
It's fine, I guess.
All right, and Hat, why don't you tell us about your week?
So I am also hanging around rank 10 right now. I'm at the top of it. I've been trying a bunch of different Warlock decks to research for the Vicious Syndicate report, and there's a lot of good ones out there. Like we talked about, I think straight control Warlock is a little bit better than Q Block. It is definitely less fun, right? There's less crazy interactions, but you're just so much better against aggro. And a lot of the meta right now is aggro, regardless of your stance on Raza Priest. There's a lot of it out there, but it's still only Priest is still only 10 to 15% of the metagame most of the time, and a lot of the Paladin and Hunter and Rogue decks out there have a lot harder time against regular control Warlocks. I've been playing that. It's good, but the games take forever. When I get bored, I play good old Senef class Face Hunter, and that's a good way of finishing a game quickly, one way or another. And Spellbreaker is in there because you need Spellbreaker in any deck that's trying to attack in this format. The card is just too good right now. Though I did actually play a game of Zoo before the cast, and I totally dumpstered a Raza Priest with double Nerubian Unraveler, which is a saucy card, and Zixo hit legend with a Zoo list that plays double Spellbreaker, double Unraveler. If you ever want to beat Raza Priest, drop Unraveler on curve, and you will win that game.
Seems good.
Yeah.
I was going to say with the control lock, I think that's the thing I dislike about it the most, is like I have a pretty decent win rate with it, but I've also had multiple games that went more than 20 turns, and that's just unacceptable. I'm not used to playing more than like 7 or 8 turns. That's way too many.
But those are like the best kind of games, because like around turn 18 or 19, you're just like, man, this dude has no chance. And then you just like get to play all your sweet cards, and they're still there, and they haven't conceded for some reason.
I do like
guy.
the puzzle. I do like the puzzle aspect where you're like, okay, I've solved this. I'm playing against Control Mage, and I know they have exactly like 2 more big boards worth of threats, and I have a Gul'dan in play, so they literally have no chance because I'm just going to hero power them every single turn until they run out of cards, and then I can start playing my cards. It is a pretty good feeling.
All right. Just over mine real quick. I've been quote unquote spring or we were talking about this before, winter cleaning. So I've been clearing a bunch of quests. I got up to rank 11 and then dropped down to 12 just clearing quests. I've been doing some dungeon runs. I think I had a quest for it and got some extra cards and stuff. So that was fun. I'm just curious, Appa, have you done all the dungeon runs? Have you cleared all of them?
No. So I actually started streaming like the dungeon run challenge, like whenever it like first got released. And I did like 2 dungeons or something, and then I was just like, man, this is just so hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And I just stopped. So I've done like 2 or 3 dungeon runs with like a few classes, and like that's about it. It's just like so difficult, and like the reward for me personally, like I don't really care that much about the card back, so like whatever.
All right. I was just curious because we haven't heard from you in a while, and I'm sure other people were curious too.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our week. Let's go ahead and jump into the news. All right, so we have a couple things to talk about this week. The first one we're going to talk about is a tweet made by Ben Brode, and we're going to go over this a little bit in depth. If one of you want to take lead of this, just go ahead and highlight it or something. But his tweet was about the new upcoming changes. So I'll just read it straight up here so people know what it was. Ben reading discussions about balance. We have an update coming next month, which includes some cool events, and that is when any balance changes would happen. We'll be sure to announce any changes as the patch gets closer. See you at the HCT World Championship next week. So looks like they're going to be implementing some changes to some cards, which is kind of why we wanted to talk about it in our Dexplanations game. But let's talk a little bit about it right now. So who wants to start it off with their initial impressions for hearing about this from Ben? Or not?
I got it. All right.
Okay.
So I've had a lot of conversation on Twitter today with a lot of people about the nature of the format. This tweet kind of prompted a lot of interactions about where the problems in the format were, if there were any problems, about the nature of win rates versus perception. There was even an interesting Twitter conversation about if you could nuke any one card from Hearthstone or from the current format, which would it be? And I really want to talk about the nature of these discussions that are happening, and these obviously there are discussions going on all around the Twitterverse and Hearthstone in general. If you have discussions about the problem's health, and everyone thinks it's unhealthy for a different reason, you've got a couple different phenomenons going on. First of all, the format is probably balanced, and second of all, it's probably not fun, in that people's perception is colored by what they experience. If you like playing aggro, this meta is too anti-aggro. If you like playing control, there are too many Smorky decks, and Corridor Creeper is a problem. And if you don't like Priest, there's plenty of that to go around. If you don't like playing against Paladin or Divine Favor, there's plenty of that to go around. There's a bunch of different competing effects that all kind of swing the game in various ways when they're played. And this leads me to believe the format needs a change despite being relatively balanced. It's not like the Ungoro format where that format was balanced and still it got the change in Quest Rogue because of that particular deck. I don't think there's one deck that's a problem in this meta. Lots of people will say Raza Priest, and I do believe that deck is uninteractive, though again the win rate is below 50%. But this format, you can compete with a variety of strategies, but the strategies are all dictated in very specific ways, right? If you're playing control, you have to have lots and lots of inevitability and ways to counter aggro in a really locked in way, right? In a way that you have to be able to say there's no chance you're coming back. Because if you give them a chance, there's still plenty of reach in the format, right? Aggro Paladin has tons of burst and reach with all the weapons and all the charge effects and spell breakers, and I even played against one with inequality. Hunter is Hunter. Secret Mage is super bursty. Tempo Rogue has all sorts of different burst options. There's a lot going on there. So if you're control deck, you have to be able to lock the game in before it's over. If you're an aggro deck, you have to have all these answers to really specific threats that all blow you out in very unique ways. So the decks that get to compete are the ones that are the best at being unfair, and a bunch of unfair decks playing with each other isn't a fun format. Because sometimes you get blown out by turn 4 Duskbreaker double Corridor Creeper. Sometimes you get blown out by turn 5 Voidlord. Sometimes you get blown up by Raza on 5 and Anduin on 8. None of these things are fun to experience. And I haven't even mentioned, Keleseth, Shadowstep, Keleseth, Coin, Pirate, patches for, 3/3 attack. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you lose aggressively and quickly, and they're all from different archetypes. But they're all inherently swingy and oppressive when they happen, even though they don't happen all the time. So
while you were talking, I actually kind of just had an interesting thought. Would you guys kind of agree with the notion that if there aren't any or like very many mid-range decks viable in a format, that format might be unhealthy? Because right now you can't really play like mid-range decks because you're going to either get run over by aggro or you're going to get outvalued way too quickly by control.
Well, mid-range is different in Hearthstone, right? Like, it's because Dragon Priest, I would call it a mid-range deck, but if I was playing Control against Dragon Priest, I would feel bad about that matchup because they just have endless value.
That's fair.
And
Because you have the Spiteful Summoner,
well, Spiteful
Mind
Summoner,
Control
Draconid
Shoes.
Operative, and Netherspite Historian, like, you generally outvalue the control.
Yeah, I think that one's probably the closest to like
Yeah.
a viable mid-range strategy.
Well, and you can kind of
I was
say
more-
Tempo
I
Rogue,
was-
too.
Yeah, I was more thinking along the lines of like mid-range hunter topping out of like high main and like the 8-drop. I forget her name.
Katrina,
Yeah,
Winter Wisp.
yeah, Winter Wisp, and then like mid-range shaman or like mid-range paladin or whatever. Like it seems like you have to either go like really underneath the control decks or like really kind of like outvalue your opponents. And I feel like that it seems like in the past too that's been kind of a good indicator of like the format's balanced, but it's not like all that fun. Because like it seems like the format's very polarized in that way.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask because you said I was trying to figure out the difference between just an unfun meta and a unhealthy meta. If those are they're related, but are they always the same thing? Because I don't know if this is necessarily an unhealthy meta. Which it strains me to say that because it's definitely can feel unfun at sometimes. I guess my biggest takeaway from this meta seems to be that there are a lot of what I would consider non-games, a lot of games where one person feels like they run away with the game and there wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. And that when it doesn't feel like you had a lot you could do in the game, then I think that leads to some bad feelings. Whether or not, obviously there are things you can do to try to increase your percentage in any given game, but when you have things like Keleseth Shadow Step and Raza on 5, Anduin on 8, and some of the insane Paladin starts, every deck is just doing these super unfair things because there's so many cards in the format, and in order to make the new cards apparent or make them show up, it feels like they have to kind of up the power level. But I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but it definitely feels balanced and unfun at the same time, kind of like Hat was saying. That's why I'm glad Hat went first, because he was able to put it so eloquently.
Man, whenever I used to be on this podcast, I would just I would never really know where I was going with something. I would just kind of start talking with like a little point and just see where it took me. So don't worry about it.
What do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of cards out there right now. Once everything kind of drops off in standard, that may change things. Doesn't really do much difference in standard. I mean, in wild. But I don't have quite as much say as you guys do because I don't play in standard as much as you guys. But I agree with what you guys have said. So. It's healthy, but it's not fun. I don't like Void Lord, or is that what it's called, Void Lord?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of the thing with power creep too. Like in any game, it's you start making cards too powerful, you have to make other cards to combat them, and then everything gets so ridiculously strong and powerful that a game feels over turns before it's actually over, and then you're just sitting there, you're like, man, that sucked. I don't really want to play this right now.
Yeah.
That's never really where you want to be with the game. I don't know. I don't think we want to bash on this format too much, but
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I still really enjoy playing the format. There are a lot of frustrating moments and there are a lot of frustrating cards I play against, but I'm still coming back to it. I'm still queuing up and trying to figure out ways to enjoy it, and I don't know that I would want this format to go on forever, but for the time being, I think it's fine. It's just a matter of how many more months are we going to be in this exact same format? Like, am I going to be saying the same thing at the beginning of March?
Here's my perspective. Like, when we have something that's really strong or really prevalent, I try to play something different. I try to play a meme deck or something that gets me off of what's popular, what's played all the time. Just because, number one, I see it so much. Why would I want to play it? Okay, I'm not liking playing against it. Why would I want to play it? And that's kind of what brought me to Wild, and the fact that I could play so many different decks, or it seems like there's more you can do, and that I like the fact that you can be surprised of what you're going up against more often than in Standard. So that's just how I feel, but that's what pushed me to Wild, at least. So, and I get to play more different decks, nostalgic decks, different things. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, well, and the format, it's not saying there's no fun left in Hearthstone. It's not like we're all like, well, this is the last episode. We're done with Hearthstone. Bye. It's not what's happening. But also think about the time when Hearthstone has had deeply unhealthy metas that weren't because of obvious design mistakes like your Spirit Claws or 5-mana Spreading Plague or leaving Innervate in a set that you print Ultimate Infestation, whatever you want to call it. The formats that have needed the most help have been LOE Standard, or pre-Standard, LOE, the last set before Standard, right? When Secret Paladin and Grim Patron were running amok, and you could play Reno Lock, I guess, or you could play Zoo, but then they had to rotate it. MSG Standard, which if you recall correctly was Who Goes There, Small-Time Buccaneer Standard. And then
oh my god!
And then this current standard. And what you'll notice is these are all the standards immediately before rotation when there is the largest possible critical mass of cards in the format. Now you look at some of the weaker standards in history. Whispers of the Old Gods, right after rotation. And the best standard format ever is the Journey to Ungoro standard format, where there are about 15 to 20 viable Tier 1 decks. None of them was ever the best deck forever. The most problematic deck was Quest Rogue because it was uninteractive, but it still didn't win that much, and they nerfed it anyways. That was the best standard format. Restriction breeds creativity. Hearthstone has created a problem where it cannot handle 6 sets of cards. Anytime you have 6 or more sets of cards in a format, it becomes unhealthy. So, we need to look at, it's not power creep, it's complexity creep in a format. When you have too many options to play together, then you're able to do more degenerate things. You have more choices of how to build all these things together. Because the format needs a critical mass of smaller aggressive minions or burn spells or all these things that are innate to Hearthstone. You have archetypical cards. You have your card draw, you have your burn spells, you have your cheap minions, you have your expensive game winners, you have your taunt cards. Tar Creeper by itself is fine, but Tar Creeper and Stonehill Defender and Dirty Rat and whatever else early taunt minions you have, at a certain point you have a critical mass where you can't get past it. And so you end up with these cards that have so much redundancy. That's where you look at your Aggro Paladin. It's 1-drops, Divine Favor, and Corridor Creeper. That is the entire deck. There's a weapon here or there. That is all the deck is. Because you can only make that kind of deck at the end of a format. So there has to be some way of preventing this many cards from getting in the format, because this only gets worse. We still have 1 legal adventure. Next year, this time, there's going to be 6 150-card sets legal. That's going to be 900 standard legal cards. It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, it's like kind of odd too, because you think about it, it's like, oh, you have 6 sets available. Shouldn't you be able to like build a bunch of like really cool decks and stuff? But then you're also just kind of pigeonholed into like the quote unquote best decks at the time. It's like you can't really build another Control Warlock deck other than like the one that's popular right now, because it's like, why aren't you playing just like Void Lord and all this other stuff? Like I feel like you should be able to have a little bit more variety in what you're able to build, but it seems like the more sets there are, the more you're pushed towards these certain deck builds and archetypes.
Yeah, historically Hearthstone has been that way, and every card game has been that way, that more options means you only pick the best ones, not you pick more options, right?
Yeah.
And so
And the best ones present themselves as that much better than the ones that are just slightly worse than it.
right. And I mean, Raza Priest is the most popular deck. It is not the best deck, but it's the most popular. It is a very clearly effective strategy. It is something people are used to, and there's no reason right now for it to go away. And that it's a deck that was good before, it got better. It's good against the format as it stands. And because we're leaving those same cards there and improving the deck, something new has to be refined, polished, and presented in the face of this known threat, and has to stand up to be good enough as one of the best decks in the format last expansion made better. So, and that's every deck in the format has to be refined in this trial by fire. And if it's good enough in this kind of format, that probably means it's unhealthy too. As opposed to something like Ungoro, where you take a bunch of cards away, and then you print a few new cards, but you have so many fewer tools, and everyone's kind of starting from scratch, and you get one of the most fun formats, if not the most fun, the game has ever seen. I'm wondering if it makes sense that you rotate one or two sets at a time, that after the second set of the year, you rotate the first two sets of the last block, or maybe you do it every time a set comes in, a set goes out. You do kind of a rolling format. I'm not sure how to fix it, but I feel like there has to be some kind of restriction on the size of a format, because we're not proving it, but it feels anecdotally that 6 sets at a time is asking for trouble.
I feel like they're going to do a change before next year because I can't imagine them having like even more cards next year because of what's. I don't, they're going to make a change. That's what I feel. I feel like they're going to learn from it. But are we beating a dead horse? Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right. So the next one, I don't know if you guys heard, but Amnesiac is leaving NRG and heading to, I don't know, someplace, another unannounced team.
So that means that he is. I'm confused. Does that mean that he does not have a team yet, or that he has a team that they just haven't announced the team yet?
He has a team. He said, I will announce it in the near future after the Worlds, but he doesn't have a team yet.
Okay. Interesting.
So he has a team, but he doesn't. So.
But he has a team, but we don't know what it is yet, and he wasn't able to sign it until he left the last one. But we're gonna keep an eye out for it. Yeah.
All right, and then the last part, we did get a little bit of Reddit responses from Ben Brode and Mike Donay. So Mike, actually, I think it was Mike that gave the most longer response. Was it? That was talking about. No, it was Ben. Basically, they're waiting for kind of a dull in the set. So basically, month 3 of this set to release this patch where everything's going to be updated and all the arena cards are going to be changed. So the big thing was the arena cards, because everyone was asking, when are we going to get the arena cards? We heard in November at BlizzCon that this was going to change. Well, they're looking to do this as part of a promotional thing in a lull. So I'm looking forward to Smoke Bomb. You guys excited for any of these cards that are going to be coming out?
I heard something sweet that you could play that Shaman Overload spell and play Snow Fury Giant on turn 1, and that sounded broken.
Yup.
Whoa. I don't. What do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do with my hands.
Well, if your hand is full of Snow Fury Giants, you put them on the board.
Can you imagine turn 1, double Doom, double Giant, go.
I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun playing Arena, so I'm excited for these cards.
How is the format? Does it feel pretty balanced, or is there the usual like top 2 or 3 classes?
I haven't been playing it that much.
Okay.
But I don't know. Bone Mayor still feels pretty stupid to play against.
Yeah, it's funny how when I first saw that card, I'm like, that card's going to be really annoying to lose to an Arena. And then it turned out to be a really good constructed card. And I was like, oh, this must be even worse in Arena then.
Yeah, whenever you play against your first Bone Mayor, you're just like, okay, I'm getting like 2 for 1 bare minimum. Then they play the second one, you're just like, oh, okay, bottom right, we're done here.
Don't you mean Mayor minimum?
Dun, 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 dun. I thought you were going to use a different. All right, so that's basically it for the news. Yeah, so the last part was they're probably going to do some kind of promotional thing along with it, I think, because they're
I was gonna
announcing
ask
like the
real-
double gold.
I was gonna ask real quick, whatever happened to heroic tavern brawls? I felt like a couple of them happened when I started playing back in like Angoro, and I haven't seen one since. I hope one of those comes out soon because those are fun.
They've been super rare, but they are a lot of fun.
They are usually pre-rotation or pre-set release to eat your dust, or to eat your gold, rather. So,
I'm fine with it.
and they are also kind of a tournament mode sort of thing. This is Blizzard's current iteration of tournament mode, right? And they lasted it. They did one right before Ungoro, and I feel like the first one they did was the mid-range shaman meta, right? The first one they
Yeah.
did was was that that was after Kara before MSG?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised to see one in February or March. I expect we'll see one right before the end of the format because it's kind of usually the format end cap.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I remember that I built
Might be even fun to do that along with what they were doing with the new cards. That might be kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember Kibler had like a quest priest for the wild heroic tavern brawl that I got to play a couple times, and that was sweet. And so I want heroic tavern brawl back, but maybe not in spite of the normal tavern brawl, because I know a lot of like the free to play players don't like when heroic tavern brawl is live because they don't get to play normal tavern brawl and get their free pack.
If like only we had like another little tab that you could click on in the menu. Man, it was like a tournament mode or something.
Here you got him going.
Speaking of tournaments.
Well,
yeah.
it's a nice segue. I will say that Blizzard seems to use heroic tavern brawl when interest in playing the game is generally at its lowest as well, right before the set rotation, and usually at the end of an HCT format. So it makes sense they save it till the end because you alienate the least number of new or casual players, because that's usually when they've put the game down. But yes, that was a very nice segue. So why don't we talk about tournaments?
It's the grand tournament!
But we can't talk about tournaments, or rather not any ones that happened this week, because there weren't any. I checked. There have not been any tournaments in the last 7 days that we really have to discuss. So instead, we're going to talk about the upcoming HCT World Championships. They're coming not this weekend. If you're listening to this, it's probably on Saturday. A week from this, if you're listening to it, it'll be on the 18th through the 21st. It's best of 5 conquest tournament, standard group stage, which is double elimination, then cut to top 8, which is single elimination, $1 million prize pool. And we've got 16 players. From the winter champs, we have Shtanu Dachi, Frozen, Samuel Sao, and Doc Pone. From the spring champs, we've got Hoy, Kalento, Ant, and Nyria. From summer champs, we've got Surrender, Orange, Jason Joe, and Purple. And from last call, these are your points qualifier winners, the number one not qualified points earners in each region. From NA, we've got Muzzy. From EU, we've got Sintalal. From Asia Pacific, we've got Tom60229. And from China, we've got Omega Zero. Now, this will be casting. I'll repeat this after the segment, but this will be at 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 18th through the 21st. That's 11:30 p.m. Pacific the night before, 7:30 a.m. if you're on GMT, and 6:30 p.m. if you're in Sydney, Australia. And if you're in between those areas, I'm sorry, I do not have your specific time zone. So, cast. Without seeing any deck lists, because they're not public yet, make a wild guess as to who you like in this tournament. Starting with Kenny.
Oh, don't pick me first.
I'm picking you
Pass
first.
me.
Kenny, pick someone. Anyone.
All right. So I'm gonna go with. I don't know. Should I go? I'm gonna go with Hoy. I don't know why. Just Hoy.
All right.
It's good enough reason.
Yeah, it feels right.
Yes.
Okay. Appa.
Kalento, because he is an absolutely disgusting control player, and those are some of the best decks right now, or just control decks. And I'm sure he'll be able to figure out the aggro deck that he has to bring. But I feel like he's going to play the control decks better than the other dudes. Also, Kalenta is just, he's on another level than most of the people in this field. So that's who I'd pick, just like without seeing deck lists.
So speaking of seeing deck lists, I might have already taken a peek at some of the deck lists, and I haven't looked at them extensively, but the two lists that, two people whose lists I like, the first one that stood out was Scintillol, mainly because he had a combo dragon priest that I like a lot, but the thing I don't like about his list is he has mage. But the other, I think Kalenta is a really good pick. I liked his decisions for the list he brought, but he's playing like normal Highlander.
Can I change my pick? I'm gonna pick Kalento.
So I'm gonna pick Kalento for the packs, and for our listeners, I don't think I've ever won less than like 3 packs during an HCT event. So pick Kalento.
Well,
what about you, Hat?
I'm feeling a lot of Kalento-based pressure right now, but I'm going to go with Tom 60229 because every single time I've seen him play in a tournament, I have been incredibly impressed with his play, with his ability, his technical skill in the short term, and his ability to navigate games and put them into favorable positions in the long term. And the deck lists, for full disclosure, they were leaked. They're not supposed to be public right now, but they were leaked earlier today. We are going to go through next week and dissect the deck list as part of our tournament section because there's no tournaments between today and next week. So we will be diving in, but they have just come out. This is super basic first impression, and they're not even supposed to be public. So we're gonna be ethical and not look at the deck list until HCT tells us to, except for Boticus, but that's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
He's whistling.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You are not the only person to look, and they are now posted prolifically on many decklist collection sites, but we will spend the time next week and dig into them thoroughly to determine who we think will actually win and why Appa thinks it's still Kalento. But I like Tom 60229. I think he's a very impressive player, and he's really done well this year.
I feel like he always ends up bringing just like something super random though, which is why like I'm always kind of put off by him.
You mean like Singleton Mage?
Yeah.
Didn't that do really, really well for him in the last tournament?
Yeah, it was like
though?
one of his best performing decks.
I don't know. I always feel like whenever I'm thinking about him, but I don't know. Willing to be wrong, he's always fun to watch, definitely.
All right. That pretty much does it. Shall we thank some people?
Whoa, you're the most heavy metal thing I've ever seen!
All right, so our iTunes review, the only one this week, is from Grummock. He says, great podcast. This podcast is great for all Hearthstone fans as it is informative and fun. Nice and short and sweet there. Thank you so much for your review. People tend to read the short ones, so it works. So yeah, if you'd like to leave a review, and this is a time I keep meaning to mention this, at least during the podcast, but if you're listening on a podcast, your podcast catcher, usually you can tap on the actual podcast, almost like as if you're listening to music, you can see the lyrics. You should be able to click on the different links that I add to the MP3 tag. So that way, if we're talking about a deck list, you can go and click on the deck list. If you want to leave a review, there's a link there for iTunes or for Stitcher. You can click on it, and it will take you there to where you can leave a review. So I don't know. I don't mention it too often, but it is very helpful, at least with kind of following along with things that you may be interested that we talk about. We add those links for your convenience. So help us out. Go leave a review. Now it's time for our best and favorite drop, our Dexplanations. Did you miss that, Appa?
Wait, what?
The music, your favorite segment.
Oh yeah, this is it's bringing back memories.
So
All right, take it away.
So this week, with all the talk about card changes and balancing, I thought of kind of a cool little game we could play among us, and especially since we have Appa on this week, where we could kind of get into some of these cards that are a bunch of hot button issues. So I came up with Hat and I both came up with the name Same, Tame, or Hall of Fame. So basically, we're going to go over a bunch of these cards here and say whether we think the card should stay the same, if they need to tame it down by nerfing it, or if it should just go into the Hall of Fame, get removed from the format. We just don't want to see it anymore. So I have the top two here are probably the most hot button cards that we could talk about. The first one, let's talk about Raza and Anduin, and I'm going to have Kenny kind of talk about this because it's obviously a big thing in Wild as well. But what do you think?
So these are my opinions. Take them or leave them. I personally don't think Raza and Anduin. So I'll say tentatively same. Mainly because I feel like they're good. They're good together. You have to have both. If you're able to have them burn a Raza or an Anduin, or can keep them from playing it, or whatever it may be, it makes it more interesting because they'll need both to be very consistent, consecutive. So I think having both is very strong. I don't know. I don't have. It's just, again, my opinion. I don't have as much of a problem with a combination of cards than a powerful card that's just one card. Although you can kind of make an argument that they are powerful.
Yeah. So you don't think it's too much for Wild?
I mean, it's prevalent.
Is that deck? Okay.
It's very prevalent, but yeah, I that's just my opinion. I don't want to kind of go any further because I don't really have anything else I'd like to point out. I'm okay with it. I don't feel bad when playing against it, and I don't mind playing it. So there are other decks that I would much rather not play against, or I don't know. It just doesn't feel bad to me when I play against it. So
cool. So Kenny's on same. Appa.
For Raza Anduin, yes. Yep. I think Anduin's a perfectly well-designed card. I think Raza just kind of them existing in the same space is just kind of an unfortunate thing to happen. Because I think they're both pretty well-designed cards. It's just Raza kind of makes Anduin a little busted. But I think Anduin by himself is fine, and Raza by himself is fine. So I think since Raza's going to rotate pretty soon, it's not that big of a deal. So I think same is fine.
Okay. Hat, thoughts?
Oh boy. So Raza and Anduin is a perception problem, very similar to Quest Rogue in that the deck is fundamentally uninteractive, super bursty, new players hate it, don't really understand how to combat it, and it's not that great in terms of win rate overall. Now, with that being said, what this means is that Blizzard needs to find a way to bring the representation in line with the win rate, not reduce the win rate. So I would make a small change. I would go ahead and add 1 mana to each of these cards' mana cost and call it a day. Instead of 5 and 8, I'd make it 6 and 9, and I think that would be a small but significant change that would not keep the cards from being played in Wild. I don't even think it would keep the cards from being played in Standard, but it would make it easier to attack. It would make the cards feel less oppressive. It would make it less likely to slam Anduin into a Bone Mare, which feels real terrible if you were the Bone Mare player. And it would likely artificially reduce, not artificially, it would reduce the representation of Raza Priest to what I think it should be, which is a less than where it actually is, because I don't think the deck is actually that great. But it's so easy to on curve play Raza Anduin right now. And in Wild, this has the added bonus of making it impossible to go Raza on 5, Reno on 6, because they both cost the same now. So
Okay.
I think they
So
both
you're
could
on
use
tame.
just a small mana bump to be tamed a little bit.
Okay. You're muted, Kenny.
I was just gonna say I think I could get on board with that. It's
Okay.
not but I feel the same as Appa. Like it's they're fine by themselves, but together, and it may help to add in
With
mana cost or
with
something.
our powers combined, they're like the Wonder Twins.
So, real quick, I like Hat's idea, but I kind of think Raza's okay at 5, and if you just bump Anduin to 9, I think I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I think I'd be
But
okay with that change too. Like, especially with looking at the other really powerful Death Knights, like Gul'dan's 10. He obviously does like a super powerful effect, so he makes sense at 10. But I feel like Anduin's more along the lines of the Frostlich Jaina, which is at 9. So I feel like Anduin being changed to 9 would be fine.
I'm also just thinking about, because the interview we had with Asmodai, he said if they switched the Priest DK to 9 and the Rogue DK to 8, it would make all the difference in the world.
Oh, yes.
And I really
Please,
liked that idea.
Please, please give me Valira at 8. Please.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the other hot button card, probably one of the most talked about cards, is Patches. So I'm going to throw this to Appa.
Man. All right, so I wish we had the episode number, but I'll direct you back to our Mean Streets of Gadgetzan preview show, where I said, and I quote, Patches the Pirate is the best card in the set, not close. And I still believe that. I think he is better than pre-nerfed stupid 1-mana 3/2, whatever its name was. I think the 1-mana 3/2 looked better than it was because of Patches.
Small-time Buccaneer.
Small-time Buccaneer. That's what it was. I've kind of just written it out of my brain because I hate playing against it. Patches is just inherently too strong. He's like, just being able to get an effect without doing anything is just like way too good. And like I said during the preview show and the few shows after, like, he just shouldn't have charge. There's no reason for him to have charge. Patches pushes other aggro decks out of the format completely and also makes stupid busted things happen. Have you ever played against Keleseth? Keleseth Rogue, where they shadow step it and then they play their South Sea Captain, and then you're playing against like a 4/4 Patches? That's not okay. They didn't have to do anything for that other than put Patches in their deck. That's not even remotely okay. But without, like, other than the Rogue example, Patches forces other aggro decks out of the format because you have to, whenever you're building a deck, you have to think about, if I don't have Patches in this deck, do I lose to a Patches opener? If the answer is yes, scrap the deck, move on. You can't actually play it. It's not possible. You either have to, like, hope you just fade every single Patches aggro deck, or just play against mono control. Like, you can't actually beat Patches, like, if you're playing stupid 1/1s and not your own Patches. He makes, like, terrible cards playable, like the 1-mana 1/2 Corsair that just, like, shouldn't see play because it's awful, but it does because Patches is that strong that you play a 1-mana 1/2 with, like, no text most of the time. And because those cards are seeing play, it also feels really terrible when Corsair's played against you, when you're playing like Shaman or some crap and you have like a J-Claws with one durability and then they break it and you're like, man, this really sucks. But Patches is just like far too strong, pushes too many decks out of the format, and just like promotes busted things. And I hate the card, and it should have been nerfed a long time ago. and it hasn't been, so it's not going to be nerfed. But I absolutely think it should be nerfed into the ground. It's awful. I hate it.
Okay, so I was going to ask. So obviously, if you just remove charge from it, it's probably significantly more manageable. What if it read Battle Cry gains charge? So that if it gets pulled from the deck, it doesn't have charge, but if it's in your hand, it has charge. Do you think that's enough of a nerf, or
Yeah, I
do
think that'd be
you-
fine because like it's still as bad when you draw it, which is a good enough punishment to people playing patches decks that you have a stupid Stone Tusk board that gets Galakad. I think that would be like fine because like you get punished for drawing it, but it's not the end of the world because you're not just playing a 1-mana 1/1 with no text. But yeah, I don't think it should have charge when it's pulled from the deck. It's just like it's so good.
All right,
So
so
good.
so Tame from Appa, Kenny.
I would same. I'm
Tame.
I really don't. I don't have as strong of feelings as Appa.
Well, yeah, I
I
mean,
was
I'm
trying to-
kind of calling on one person that I think will talk at length about it, and then we can kind of do small wrap ups. If you have extra stuff to say about a card, definitely want you to voice it. But if you don't have a lot to say, we can just kind of go, "Yep, I agree," and we'll go to the next one.
Nope.
Kat, any thoughts?
So, my main problem with patches is not how good it is, but how easy it is to put into any deck, and how at that point it becomes a requirement to put in any deck. I want to change it to it only works when you already have a pirate in play. When you play the second pirate, you get patches, and otherwise leave the card the same. So that if you have a Swashbuckler and then you play a Bloodsail Raider, you get patches as it stands, but you have to play a second pirate. Because what I don't like about it is how samey all the decks get. You go find any 1-mana pirate or Dread Corsair, and you put or South Sea Captain, and you put 2 of those in your deck and 1 patches, and that is your pirate package. You have 2 pirates you actually want to draw, and then a free charging minion. Instead, I think it is a useful, reasonable tool for pirate decks to have in their arsenal. That it's an aggressive card that is a way of generating card advantage in a way, with significant downside if you draw it, in a deck and archetype that otherwise can't do it, in a small scale. I think that's pretty cool. But it's too easy to accomplish. So you nerf it the same way you nerf Quest Rogue, you just make that hoop a little bit smaller and you have to jump through it more precisely. I think doing it on the second pirate would still allow it to be a powerful card, but in a more specific range of decks.
Okay, so you are on Tame as well then.
Yes.
Before we move on, I found out the episode was episode 59 for Appa, talking about patches.
Yeah, I had already linked it in the Twitch chat because he is amazing. All right, so I'm just for the record, I'm on Tame as well. Don't have a lot extra to say about it, so let's go on to the next card, which gets a lot of talk about with patches because it seems to be a consistent card that makes this card way better. Corridor Creeper Hat.
Oh boy. All right. So Corridor Creeper. So here's the thing about Corridor Creeper. Blizzard historically has had a difficult time balancing neutrals because every class gets to play with them. But just because every class has access doesn't mean every class has the equal opportunity to use it. And what Corridor Creeper does, it says your deck has to have a lot of small minions that can trade effectively, or it means you can take advantage of decks that have a lot of small minions that trade effectively. And right now, we have kind of a Patches Creeper arms race, where whoever trades effectively in the early game and has the Creeper generally beats the person that doesn't have the Creeper. And the ways to get it on the board in the early game are really effective and really powerful, but if one player has Creeper and the other player doesn't, it's problematic. So I think there are a lot of ways to make this change, to make this card more interesting. I think it makes a lot of sense to make it read anytime an enemy minion dies. The other nerf that I've heard proposed is make it so that it only triggers on minions that die this turn, but I don't care for that. I think it removes a lot of the play of the card. It requires you setting up a very specific board state. I like the idea of a card that rewards you for achieving a specific game mechanic. I just think the current game mechanic is too easy to accomplish. If you make it only your enemy's minions, you make it you build tension for the aggro deck because they have to trade instead of going face to make a trigger. Or if you're control deck, you can play board clears and accomplish something with them and then also play Corridor Creeper, right? You can get incentivized for removing things. So I think there's a lot of play to making it only trigger off enemy minions. If you make it only trigger off your minion, you're basically just it's in the same type of deck it is now. It's just worse. So I'd rather it become a more nuanced card by making it care about enemy minions. And that way, if you're playing an aggro deck against a control deck, it is also a way less effective way to refuel.
That's interesting. Because I wasn't ready for that response, because I feel like there already is what is the name of the elemental that feels like it goes into these board wipe centric control decks. You guys know what I'm talking about? 5 mana 4/4 elemental. Whenever you play a spell that costs 5.
Arcane Tyrant?
Arcane Tyrant, yeah. Because I feel like that feels like a control card, and more so than Corridor Creeper feels like a card that, like, I don't know that you would want to have 2 cards that are doing a very similar thing. Anyway, I'll throw it to Appa, because I can't I can't process Hat's response yet.
I'm trying to think of the name. That's 6 mana 6/4 dragon in Blackrock Mountain.
Volcanic Dragon.
Yes.
Volcanic Drake. To Drake.
Just change it to Volcanic Drake's effect. Like, the body's better, because 5 toughness is better than 4. And the +1 attack isn't all that relevant. But that card was, like, perfectly balanced. Didn't see any play for a reason, because it was perfectly balanced. And, like, making that ability better is too good, as we've seen. So I would probably change Creeper to just, like, gets what costs 1 less mana for each creature that's died this turn. It's like, you can still have those swing turns, but, like, it's significantly worse, which Corridor Creeper needs to be.
Okay. What about you, Kenny? What do you think?
Or -1 health. Yeah, I feel like this needs to be like a small tame, a small nerf, I'd say. It's not. I mean, it's not crazy overpowered, but it could be addressed.
I feel like if you switched it to either Hat's suggestion or what the one that I see more often, which is only one side of the board minions die, I feel like it kills the card unless you reduce the mana cost very, very slightly. Like, I'm saying, like, if it was your own minions, I would feel like it would still be strong enough to see play if it cost 6. But maybe I'm sure that people will think that's probably too aggressive, because I feel like when I'm playing it, even the controlling decks that don't have as many creatures, it still feels like you get a discount from at least 1 or 2 of their creatures a lot of the time when you're playing it super early. It feels like it would not be nearly good enough if it had the continuous effect and it was only your side or their side's minions, but who knows? So seems like a tame from everybody. I don't know. With the state the format is right now, I kind of want to keep it the same, but I guess I'm the only one. Probably because I just like that card. I just like winning with that card, I guess.
You like winning games of Hearthstone.
True. Okay.
Yeah, did you want to go over your talk with Aggro Paladin and?
We'll get to that card eventually.
All right. I still want to hear from you.
All right. So the next card is that I haven't seen a lot of talk about recently, but it used to get a lot of talk about. It's kind of more of just a keep it the same or a Hall of Fame discussion, which is Auctioneer, and I was going to talk about it a little bit. And the thing is I love Auctioneer. You show me a list that has Auctioneer in it, and I will almost for sure play the card, but I do feel like it leads to a lot of restriction with what Team 5 is able to do with cards they print in the future. So I could definitely see it getting Hall of Famed with the upcoming rotation. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get Hall of Famed. And hopefully it just kind of opens up what they're able to print in terms of inexpensive spells. But also, as we see with a lot of the cards that have been changed, inexpensive spells are kind of dangerous for the game because it leads to a lot of broken stuff. So I would say most likely Hall of Fame for Auctioneer. What do you think, Hat?
You're making
Oh
me
boy.
choose on Auctioneer. So here's the thing about Auctioneer. What unhealthy deck has it been in recently? It's
Jade Druid?
okay, but that was when Jade Druid was so bad it had to play Gadget and Auctioneer. When they
World.
printed Ultimate Infestation, you took that Gadget right out of the deck.
You're saying it's bad, bro. That deck had Innervate.
Okay, but it didn't have Spreading Plague and it didn't have Ultimate Infestation. That was when Jade Druid was rocking like 49.5 win percentage and was represented well in the ladder, but like it was good in tournaments and it was mediocre on the ladder, and you played Gadget because you needed to. You needed to have some end late game punch. It's Raza plays it because Raza plays that or Lyra because it has a high spell density and a lot of 0 mana spells, and it needs to play a ton of spells. But Gadgetzan is not the enabler in that deck. And Miracle Rogue is not good right now. But if it were, and I've seen some people playing it, when Miracle has been good, Gadgetzan was the enabler, but there were other reasons why Miracle was crazy. Like, the last time Miracle was tier 1 was Small Time Buccaneer and Conceal. And those cards are crazy local bananas, right? So, Gadgetzan is the lowest powered, potentially unfair card in this format. I don't know if it needs to be an evergreen effect, but the nature of how Hearthstone works means either we always get it in Standard or we never get it in Standard again. I don't think it needs to go. And I know it sounds like this is me being biased because I love this card so much, but cycling is super fun, and it's only good when you get in position for it. It hasn't been in any way dominant in the Standard format for a very long time because all the crazy powerful 1-mana spells were removed from the format because crazy powerful 1-mana spells are problematic. So I think that Blizzard has done a good job of creating a format where Gadgetzan is more of a fair card, or at least as far as unfair cards go, it is the least offensive one ever. I don't think it needs to change.
Okay, so you're on same. Kenny?
I'm on same. Along the lines of what Hat was saying, it can be answered. It can be dealt with. I don't think it's overpowered or anything. So again, you see it in Wild too, so it's not that big of a deal.
Appa?
All right. So I'm just gonna preface this by saying I also love playing with Auctioneer. Playing with Auctioneer against my opponents is so much fun because they lose whenever I cast that man. So here's the thing. Auctioneer gets better the less cards there are in Standard. It's kind of the reverse effect of what we were talking about earlier. Because the less tools Rogue has, the more it's just going to gravitate back towards Miracle, which it's always going to do. It's literally always going to do that whenever a format rotates, because it's just like a super busted strategy. It's incredibly powerful, and Auctioneer facilitates that. Auctioneer restricts design space by a lot, and if Blizzard nerfed Blade Flurry into the ground 2 years ago and just now printed Kingsbane, Auctioneer can take a hike to Hall of Fame. Like, that man can take a break. Because the second the format rotates, Auctioneer is going to see play again. It'll probably compete with Tempo Rogue a little bit because that deck's very strong. Like, a lot of those cards stick around. But Auctioneer will give it a run for its money. And whenever you play against Auctioneer, it's never fun. Unless you dirty rat it and then you kill it. Then it's fun. But playing against it always feels bad. Almost every single time. And playing with it, and you like land an Auctioneer, and then you like play a bunch of spells, you're just like, I can't lose this game. I don't think it's like super, super broken, like as more sets come out. Like right now, it's like not even really an offender on this list that we're going to go down. But I think because of how it works, like in terms of rotation and like it's a crutch for Rogue, I feel like I'd like to see it in Hall of Fame because I like playing with the card and stuff, and I think it's fine and wild and everything. But I think it's always going to be there and kind of be a center point of discussion, like whenever formats rotate. And I think that kind of sucks.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's why they made the Hall of Fame, right? Is because of cards that are auto includes at any point in the format's lifespan need
Yeah.
to go away. And Auctioneer is, I think, the best argument you can make for the need for a classic or for a rotating classic set where not every card in the classic and basic set sticks around. If I could play with Auctioneer every other year, that would be the answer, right? Like I get the Auctioneer year and then it rotates out for a year and then it comes back. I think that would be really interesting. But since it's always either I'm legal or I'm Hall of Fame as a card, it's getting rid of it forever seems like it's too much, but having it around forever seems like it's not enough.
Yeah, like right now it feels like, why get rid of Auctioneer? But like 6 months ago or whatever, it's just like, get rid of this card. This sucks. That sucks to play against.
These are all good points. So seem like we're kind of half and half on that one. Let's go to the next card. Oh boy. Kenny, tell me about Barnes.
So Barnes is obvious. It's just a wild card, right? Yeah. I get a little confused of what's still in standard or not, but I'm pretty sure it's just wild. Barnes, I feel, opens up to certain type of decks that are good. It's already in wild, so there's a lot more answers to cards like Barnes and certain decks that use it. So it's I think it's fine. Sometimes in certain decks like Big Priest, it can, if you get the right pull, it's like, okay, you got, like, what are you gonna do on turn 3? But hey, it's a quick game anyway. You just move on, and it's not gonna happen that time all the time. So I don't feel like it's it can feel bad in those situations, but I don't think that it affects the win percentage any more than it really does. But it's a good card, and I like it. I think it should be same. So trying to keep it short and sweet so we can keep going.
All right, Appa, what do you think about Barnes?
I also think same, because it's like by itself, it's not that busted. But like now that we're playing against Big Priest all the time, when the Barnes on 4, you're just like, man, that sucks. But yeah, like throughout its history, it's been fine. So like, just keep it, whatever. It's gonna rotate anyways. Like, who cares? It's gonna go into Hall or Wild, and like that format's crazy anyways.
All right, what do you think, Kat?
This is a poorly designed card that I don't believe to be a power level issue, but I don't think that the mechanic is healthy for the game. I wouldn't change it. I would have never printed it in the first place, but I don't think that it is currently a problem in standard. I just don't like to see it because it rewards all the things that I don't like about Hearthstone. So I like that it rewards deck building challenges, but I don't like that is the only way to reward said deck building challenge on turn 3.
Okay. I think it also it feels like a card that is restrictive to design space. It feels like there's a lot of potential for abusability, obviously, with this card. So I think it's fine to keep it the same and have it just rotate. But I agree with Hat that it maybe necessarily wasn't the best choice to print. Let's see. Let's go to the next card, which is Keleseth. Hat, why don't you tell me a little bit about Keleseth?
I have fundamentally believed that any card that uniquely influences a game by whether or not you draw your one copy within the first few turns, and even a card like Reno can be problematic in that it's get it or not get it is such a dramatically different game. I don't believe that is necessarily super healthy. You want replayability in a format, but the format doesn't feel super replayable after you get Keleseth on 2 a bunch of times. So there has to be... This is the ultimate high roll card if you get it on 2 and you buff your deck and you probably win, especially if you have Shadow Steps with it, or you don't get it on 2 and you by definition don't have a 2-drop. So I don't like how large the disparity is between those cards. With that being said, I don't believe it to be a power level issue. I believe it to be a design and fun issue. I don't think it needs to change, but I do think that it's going to be a card that people roll their eyes at in standard for a while. Now, it doesn't mean it's a problem, just I think it's a design that I would move away from in the future if I were Team 5. But I wouldn't touch it.
Okay. Kenny?
Same. On both sides, I agree with Hat, and I would keep it the same. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Appa?
So I've never really been a fan of these kind of cards like Reno, Raza, Kazakus, Keleseth, where it's like win them, increase your win percentage dramatically. Like that. I feel like that's just lazy design in a way. It's like, oh, you have this kind of cool effect. Okay, let's just like shove that on a card and ship it out there. I think it sucks to play against. It also sucks to play with, like half the time or more, because like you don't draw it, and then you draw it on turn 7. You're like, man, why is this in my deck? Why don't I just have like some other good 2-drop or something? I've had plenty of games with like Razaka's Priest where like Raz is in my bottom 3, and I'm like, man, this is super lame. I just like, I don't know. I can't really put into words what I don't like about that kind of design choice, but it really sours me when I play with or against it. It just kind of feels lazy, and I don't really like them printing cards like that.
Okay, but you would keep it the same?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't actually know how I feel about Keleseth. So, I mean,
I think the reason I would keep it the same is because it gets worse, like the more 2-drops that are printed,
Okay. So the next card I put on here, and I don't know if it's worthy of being on this list. Maybe you guys can tell me if you think it's even worth being on this list. It's Leroy Jenkins. It's a card that I see in a good majority of aggro decks, and even though it's already been nerfed before, it feels like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a card that I want to always be around for aggro decks. Is just kind of the aggro finisher. So maybe I could just get a quick consensus from you guys if you think it should, just keep staying around, if it always seems like a card you guys want to be in standard or not. And I'll start with Kenny.
I feel like if you're playing against an aggro deck, you're still automatically thinking, do they have Leroy? Do they not? So I don't think it's really something. Short answer, same. I don't think
Okay.
it's an issue. So.
All right, Appa.
So I'd probably Hall of Fame it, not because of like, I don't know, like the power level on it is fine. It's just kind of the design philosophy of charge. Like they've gutted a lot of charge minions because charge kind of stinks to play against. Like you can't realistically stabilize against hyper aggressive decks at 6 or less, which is pretty silly. Is that you kind of work with 23 life. You can't really take 24 damage and like expect to win a game if they have Leroy,
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a hyper aggressive deck, you're just gonna play Leroy, like most of the time. So I'd probably Hall of Fame it, not because of like the power level, but just kind of what it does to a game, like when you draw it,
Okay. And
so you want to move away from like aggro decks being
well, I like aggro decks. I just don't like huge, like big chunk, like hit you for a lot charge minions. Like Arcane Golem was a good example, and I think Leroy Jenkins is a good example. I think Southsea Deckhand is like perfect. Like 2 out of the hand that like hits you for the final 2. Like that feels like you navigated the game really well.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you have Leroy and you've just like ended up dealing 24 and they're at 6, it's like, oh, you're dead. Whoops, you don't have a taunt.
or they're at 12 and you have a shadow step.
or they're at 12 and you have a shadow step.
Hat, any closing thoughts?
So many of these cards that we talk about are going to once again be cards that I want to play against once every couple of years, right? In not every format, but some formats. Leroy is fine power level wise. It feels bad when that's the only card that can kill you when it kills you. But if you said Leroy is going to be a standard legal card for the remainder of Hearthstone's existence in this world, that can't possibly be the answer. It can't be from now until forever. Leroy is around. So there has to be some point where you say, give Leroy a break, but there's no system in place for Hall of Faming and then un-Hall of Faming. If there was some rotating standard format, I think that would be the answer for so many of these cards that we've talked about and that we're going to talk about. I want to play against these sometimes, just not all the time. I don't want to remove deck-making decisions. So, don't take it out right now, but there's going to be a world in the future where we're all tired of Leroy and it's got to go.
Got it. All right. next card I have on the list is Alexstrasza, and I want Appa to talk about it.
So in every deck where Alexstrasza is good, Alexstrasza is not the problem. Alexstrasza is a perfectly fine card. It's designed to be a control card, but because of its effect, it's really weird, because if you put it in the control shell, it's perfectly fine card. Like if you land some big fat idiots and then you've controlled the game up to that point, your fat idiots stay alive, then you Alexstrasza their face, maybe you kill them on turn 14 or something, because you cut them from 30 to 15, you have a 9/9 and a stupid 7/7 or whatever, and you hit them. But that's not really how it works right now. Right now it's just in combo decks, and it's just pretty much going to facilitate combo decks for as long as it exists, which kind of stinks because it restricts design space in a really odd way. I don't know what I would do with it. I really don't know. I want to say keep it the same, but it also just kind of pushes decks to look for OTKs after you play Alexstrasza, like Fireball, Frostbolt, which is awful to lose against. It's just oh, cool. I have no chance. I don't have life gain. I don't know. I'd lean towards keeping it the same because I don't think it's a severe I'm blanking on the words here, but I'd probably keep it the same if I had to choose.
It almost sounds like Hat's suggestion might be something you might be interested in, where it's legal sometimes and not legal other times. What do you think, Hat?
Unique, powerful effects are great, but not for 4 years. We've been playing with Alexstrasza for 4 years, and it was in the beta. Got rid of armor. That's not okay. They got rid of it. That's not okay. But now it's just it's not overpowered. It's a cool, interesting effect. We've had the same one in Standard for 4 years. It needs a break, and it's not a problem. Both of those sentences can be true. And I'm going to say that about almost all the remaining Standard cards.
All right. Kenny, last thoughts on Alexstrasza?
They're so much more articulate than I am about it. I agree with Appa as far as it's not really the problem in the decks that it's included in. But yeah, it's an old card. So I agree with Hat on that point. So Hat's point is growing on me. Yes, it's an old card, and I have no issues with it. But I guess just seeing something new. But it's still available to me in Wild, so I have no issues with it.
All right. Well, speaking of Wild, I know this card, it only seems to see play when it's doing something very degenerate. Oftentimes that's in Wild, but sometimes it sees play in Standard. Kenny, talk to me about Malagos.
It needs to go. Bye. Yeah, I don't like Malagos. Mainly, I don't like playing against it, obviously, but Malagos, I don't like playing it either. I don't know. It's been around too long, so. But it seems like more and more decks are starting to use it, and it's kind of crowding their design space. So I can see that point. But
do you think it needs to get nerfed a bit for the Wild format, or do you think it's fine in Wild?
It's fine in Wild, but it's just
Okay.
I want to hear Appa.
Yeah, let's go Appa.
I don't know. It seems like whenever it sees play in Standard, it's for very brief periods until people either play more aggressive or put armor in their deck. Man, I don't know. I like the card a lot. Malagos is one of my favorite cards because it kind of forces people to build decks differently, and if you don't draw the Malagos, then you're just oh, my deck does nothing. But then if you do, sometimes they're dead on turn 10. I don't know. Man, this one's hard because I love Malagos a lot. I'd probably say Hall of Fame it because it's fine and Wild. and I'm sure it kind of restricts a little bit of design space in standard. But I don't know. I guess I'll say Hall of Fame.
Okay. And Hat.
It's Ben Broda said this is one of the cards that most restricts their design space. I don't care. I want it to stay around because this card has not been powerful enough in most formats for me to get sick of it.
Yeah.
It was in Mali Druid for a while, but that was a Yogg Saron deck, and Mali was all kinds of not the problem there. It was in the Aviana Kun deck, but that deck was like fringe at best. All the Mali decks are fringe, and so
Yeah, like they're all like super like corner cases of the format.
Like Quest
But
Druid.
like, yeah, and I don't know, but like it also like does restrict that design space, which is like a big problem in a card game. It's like, especially if it's a classic evergreen card, which is like the thing that kind of pushed me to like, let's probably Hall of Fame this so we can just like have cool cards.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to keep this around so they don't print 0 mana cards, because 0 mana cards are super hard to balance, and I worry about them messing it up. Because I think about half the time you print a 0 mana card, you have a pretty significant chance of messing it up.
Okay. So now this is a card that we couldn't talk about this card without Appa being on the podcast, and I will just say, Appa, we're trying to keep this to less than a 3-hour show. So, what do you think about Ice Block?
All right, I've talked about this on so many previous Concede podcasts. I don't know the episode numbers, but chances are, if it's like 100, like episode 60 to 100, I probably talked about it, because I hate this card's design so much, because it never goes in like a fair deck. It always goes in a deck that's doing something degenerate. The most fair deck that it goes in is Secret Mage. Other than that, it goes in Control Mage decks that are looking to get as much time as possible, and then you pop their Ice Block, and then they just get an extra turn. For actual free, they played 3 mana, they played this card on turn 3, 10 turns down the line, they just get to time warp you, and they take an extra turn. There's nothing you can do about it unless you play this terrible 4 mana 2/4 that destroys all your enemy secrets, which nobody plays, because that card is awful in every other matchup that's not Mage. Because Secret Hunter isn't a thing. I'm sorry. But so it's always trying to do something degenerate, and it facilitates that because it gives them an extra turn equal to the number of Ice Blocks you played that game. If you have 1 Ice Block, you get 1 extra turn. You have 2 of them, you get 2. If you have none, you get none. And it's not okay, because you can keep printing these secret cards, these understated like secret killing cards, but Ice Block's still going to be a problem because the cards just aren't good enough, like that break the secret. Just Hall of Fame the card. It's not okay. It's literally always going to be a problem, like until it's either nerfed into the ground or Hall of Famed. Like taking an extra turn is not okay, especially for 3 mana. If it's like 10 mana or something, sure, make Ice Block 10 mana, whatever. But like 3 mana, take an extra turn later on in the game when you develop it early, and then you like start doing other stuff. It's just like, it's inherently uninteractive, and it's just horrendous design, and it's been around for like 5 years, and I hate it. Just get rid of it.
So tell me how you really feel. Yeah, thankfully the Ice Block decks are not the biggest thing in the meta currently, but yeah, it is definitely a card that feels terrible to lose to. Let's see. Any extra thoughts, Kenny?
You basically covered it.
Hat, anything?
I want to make sure I recognize, I think the design space that Ice Block lives in, it does create a different way to play Hearthstone than you normally can, and I think that has value. I think there is value in making combo decks or making decks that operate on a different axis, like Freeze Mage it was so different and still is very different from most other decks that have ever existed in Hearthstone, in that you play it in a different kind of way than you play other decks. That has value. The problem here is that all the goodwill from that has worn off in the 4 years that Freeze Mage has been playable, because it's been legal since it was like it's been good since it was printed. It's really skill intensive. Appa, I know you went to a fireside recently where you got to play with Oskaka's Freeze Mage from the World Championship Finals. That deck was rude.
I mean, I got to play with like Emperor Thorsan and Ice Lance.
Ugh.
They didn't stand a chance.
But so it's fun to experience that. It's not fun to be in the receiving end, but it's good for Hearthstone over time to have different and interesting ways to play the game. It's good for King Togwaggle Mill to exist. It's good for various spell-based win condition decks to exist. It's good for Grim Patron to exist for a small period of time, just not forever.
Yeah, so. I agree. I really enjoy combo decks and like watching people make them and having them like be tuned and exist and stuff. The thing about Ice Block to me is whenever you're playing against somebody who has Ice Block and like you hit them down to 2 and like their secret hasn't popped and you played like a spell, you played a minion, you've attacked them and it hasn't procced, you're like, oh, they're getting 2 extra turns bare minimum. Because I don't have a secret like destruction spell in my deck, and I'm going to hit them next turn, which gives them an extra turn. Then it's going to pop. Then they're going to get a turn after that, which I hate so much. Because like if you don't pop it, like on your terms, like they just get to do whatever they want, which I don't really like. I do like that Freeze Mage exists, and I like that you can play it like in a completely different facet than like other Hearthstone decks. I just don't like Ice Block.
I really hope that Arcane Anomaly continues to get developed into these decks, because I've been playing against a couple of the big mage decks that play that card, and that seems like hopefully a replacement where Ice Block can, you know, it's obviously not replacing Ice Block, it's like supplementing it currently, but hopefully it can kind of find its way in there to give Control Mage still a shot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, for the rest of these cards, I want to go a little quicker because we've been going on, mainly because I put all of the really cards to talk about a lot. Well, it wasn't just you; it was all of us. We got through the really hot button cards up top. We'll go through these next ones somewhat quickly. Kenny, what do you? I heard a lot about this before, and not so much lately. What about Primordial Glyph?
So, Primordial Glyph, I like. I think I would keep it the same. I like Portal from before with minions. This is just for spells. I like it. I don't feel
too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my short opinion.
Right. Yep, I like it. Appa, Ultimate Infestation.
I would still nerf this card. Like,
okay.
It's still very, very strong. And I think when rotation happens, it'll be this and Wild Growth will be the reason to play Druid. You should let me talk about Wild Growth just a little bit. But I think Ultimate Infestation should get a little bit of tuning because I think it's still slightly too strong.
Okay. Well, real quick, what would you change?
I'd probably the communities.
What if it was choose 3?
Yeah, like choose 2, choose 3, something like that.
Or 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4.
Yeah, maybe 4, 4, 4, 4. Like 5's just so much.
Okay.
It's so much.
Let's go to the next card. Spreading Plague, Hat.
5 was a mistake. 6 feels on the verge of unfair, but is probably fine. I still think this card should have made 1/4s, and all the Druid cards from KFT should be the number 4 instead of the number 5. But I don't think it needs a change now. It is still a very, very powerful effect, and has only gotten better because people have learned how to play against it. Oddly enough, this card would get worse when Patches rotates.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I do wish they would have changed the size of the minions and not the cost of the card, personally.
My thing about Spreading Plague is I was actually thinking about this the other day. It's like it's very reminiscent to Blizzard. Because it like you play it and you like stall a turn, and then like the next turn they get to do whatever they want because they probably killed the stupid 1/5s. Yeah. And like you just tick the mana cost up, and then it's fine. Because they were both 5, and now they're both 6, and they're fine.
All right, fair enough. So I had this for me, but Appa, Wild Growth.
So I think you should keep it this. Well, no, it's wrong. I think it should do the same effect, but it shouldn't give you excess mana draw a card. That's stupid. It should have a trade-off. Right now, it doesn't have a trade-off. It should have a trade-off for you putting it in the deck. Like if you draw it on turn 10, too bad. You have Wild Growth in your deck. Shouldn't let you draw a card. That's stupid. If you take that away, the card's perfectly balanced. Right now, it's just like it's a little too good. Yeah, that's about it.
I like that. All right, Kenny. I said some things about this card. What?
I'm gonna give you my opinion. I'm gonna give you my opinion, but I'll let you take it. So a Call to Arms probably needs to be nerfed a little bit, but I'm not sure exactly how. I think you have a better idea. Like, how do you feel about it? I'd like to hear you.
Okay, so I said this card did not excite me, and I didn't think it was going to end up being very good.
No.
I was wrong.
I missed this
Card is-
podcast. Oh no.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Appa. We talked to him at the time and said you were crazy. We all said you were a crazy person.
Everyone disagreed with me, and everybody was right. Yeah, this card is really good. I don't know that it needs a nerf, but I put this on the list because I was stupid and wrong. And this card is kind of disgusting, but it might need. I could see it needing a nerf when a bunch of cards rotate, because when the power level of everything else goes down and this one maintains a very high power level, it might become oppressive. But I think we'll kind of have to see what happens during rotation.
It pulls cards out of your deck too, so that's another thing to think about if you're not playing with as many cards in a set. So
it also gets better when patches goes away, because you don't pull up patches anymore.
Well, you never do anyway, right? Because you play your pirate first, so that you don't pull out the so you already have the patches out, and then it's insane.
I will say this card makes Righteous Defender infuriating to play against.
Righteous Protector?
Yeah, the 1 mana 1/1 taunt bubble. Like, whenever your opponent's ahead on board and then they go get a Knife Juggler and a Bubble Taunt, you're just like, geez. I guess I'm never killing anything.
Yeah. Speaking of Knife Juggler, by the way, in the list of cards that I wish were never printed, Knife Juggler is probably one of the cards I dislike playing against and playing with as much as possible. And it was in the first deck I ever hit Legend with. But man, every time you need that to hit a minion and it doesn't, it's just like so annoying. And I wish the card just dealt damage to face. That whenever you play, I wish they left it as a 3/2, but it could only deal damage to their face. And I think I would be much more happy with that card.
He turns into Raynad when it's played.
But they needed to print that card because the Raynad Knife Juggler meme is so important to Hearthstone's history. Hearthstone's history would not be the same without it.
I remember when Knife Juggler got nerfed, and then everybody in Aggro Shaman was playing Flame Juggler. That felt worse to miss on, because then you just had a stupid River Croclus that just hit him in the face. And it's like, they still got a 2/1 on the board.
Well, speaking of what have been busted Paladin cards, what do you think about Divine Favor, Hat?
Nuke it from orbit. Remove the card from existence. Burn it with fire. Like, here's the thing about Divine Favor. It's either completely unplayable or wins you the game on the spot. And the past 2 episodes, what I've said is, I know I win as Raza Priest against Paladin if their Divine Favors get them less than 10 extra cards per game. That's not okay. But when the card is bad, you leave it in your hand and you die. And if you get it in your opening hand ever, you die. It's not well made. I don't think it's overpowered. It is not an overpowered card. It is a poorly designed card to the extreme. And if you ever played a control deck and you've played against this card, you know why it needs to be gotten rid of. Because you play this incredibly hard-fought 1-for-1 resource game, and I'm not saying that Paladin can't have a card that re-resources them. I'm fine with that. Call to Arms is powerful, but at least evenly powerful. Divine Favor isn't. But if you've ever played Aggro Paladin, you get 2 of these in your opening hand in the mirror match, you know what that feels like too. You never want to be in that game. It's just the worst feeling ever. I think it needs to be a card like draw a card for each minion your opponent has more than you. Like, if you have 1 minion, they have 4, 3 mana, draw 3 cards, something like that. That at least has a little bit more play to it. I want something that has some play to it. This is instead based on the matchup you're in. It's either 3 mana draw 6 or 3 mana do literal nothing. And that's
It's
not
either
a
do nothing or do all of it.
Yeah. 3 mana draw 6 cards is not okay. Battle Rage, whenever it drew 3 or 4 cards in Grim Patron, was too good, and they nerfed the elements that make it good. But anytime you get to the end of a format, Aggro Paladin exists because they have to print good 1-drops. And so after 6 sets are legal, you have good 1-drops from 6 sets. You just put all of them in a deck. You put in Divine Favor, you put in a couple weapons, and you have a deck. So it's Divine Favor is always going to be good in these kind of environments, but it's not ever good in the mirror, and it's crushingly powerful against any control deck. I don't like these hard answers to specific archetypes that are otherwise useless. It feels bad. So I would eliminate the card from existence because it's not a healthy and stable design.
This is the card that made Pally my jam, though. Like that, I was an aggro Pally from the beginning. Yeah, that's my jam.
Well, that was great. Now I know the Ice Block is to Appa as Divine Favor is to Hat.
Oh yes, I firmly believe this is the worst design card in Hearthstone's history.
Hat made me cry with laughter, so thank you.
All right.
From Orbit.
Yeah. It's the only answer.
All right. So how about Void Lord, Appa?
Void Lord is a great design card, in my opinion. I think that card is like fantastic design. It's a big Lord of Void dudes, and he's real fat, and he just like waddles around the void, and he's like, ugh, I'm big. And then he dies, and he spits out little dudes, and they're like, I'm small. And then they scoot around. He's not the problem. Possessed Lackey is the problem. Recruit is a stupid mechanic. They got like real dangerous, like with all of the recruit cards, and one of them turned out to be busted, and that's Possessed Lackey. Get rid of that card, Void Lord is perfectly fine.
The weapon is also a pretty big problem, right? Anything that cheats into play the Void Lord is the problem.
Cheating
the Void Lord
things
itself
is classically very busted in card games.
But the weapon,
any of the card games,
the weapon, you have to draw the card that you want to put into play, which is a much lower chance than going and guaranteed get it. And you have to spend a turn to do actual nothing and play a 5-mana weapon that does nothing at all.
Yeah, you have a lot more control with the Lackey.
Yeah, you get to coin out the Dark Pact on turn 5, and you get to gain 8 and also gain Void Lord, which, as far as minions go, has a lot of bang for the butt.
Okay. Yeah, I was just interested because I was just listening to Omnistone before the cast, and they were kind of talking about the state of Warlock and how none of the cards from the Control/Cube Warlock deck are going to be rotating, and it looks like it's going to be pretty scary post-rotation. So I
would
to talk
keep
about
Void
that.
Lord the same, nerf Possessed Lackey. Somehow. I don't know how. Just Recruit's stupid. That was dumb.
Just change Recruit to summon a random demon.
Yes, that's a lot better.
Yep.
Okay, speaking of cheating things out, Hat, what do you think about Preparation?
Love the card, not fair, needs to go. It's Miracle Rogue can survive without prep and can be more tempo based. Prep is 0-mana spells that make other 0-mana spells should not exist. I really enjoy playing with this card. It requires a bit of cleverness and planning to make it work, but I just think the effect is too powerful and too specific to be healthy in the game. It
Hall
does
of Fame that thing.
Yeah, well, Hall of Fame, I think Hall of Faming is fine. It needs to not stay in standard. And I think I would move this card now because you're only one Crystal Core away from this card being overpowered again. It's anytime you have a good spell in Rogue, this makes it so much better, and Broad is on record as saying it limits design space. I think it really needs to go.
Okay. You're still thinking about Divine Favor, aren't you?
And the last card I have on the list is Shadow Step. This one is a shout out to Wicked Good because he said that if there was one card he would delete off the face of the planet and which never existed, it was Shadow Step. And I don't know that we can be friends anymore. Wicked Good. I love Shadow Step. I never want it to go away. I want it to stay the same forever.
I think it's a great card, but it also scales like it has like a positive correlation with like how good your battle cries are. Like the better the battle cries, the better Shadow Step does.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great
I-
with
And
a
like now
particular
we're
2
seeing
mana
that we have a
2/2.
minion. We have a minion that's literally 4 mana, 3/2 draw 2 minions, and you Shadow Step that, and that's not fair. And that goes in the deck with like stupid vile like assassinate on a dude. Like Shadow Step's crazy right now, but like
That's another
a
card I
year
missed
ago,
on.
Shadow Step was booty.
You missed on Vile Spine Slayer?
No, not Vilespine.
You
Minstrel.
missed to add it, right?
Minstrel.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
That was a card. That was a card I expected to go into Miracle Rogue, and I was thinking that when you have SI7 Agent and Vilespine Slayer in the deck, that you can't afford. It's like really hard to fit in the extra combo card. But turns out you just take out Vilespine Slayer from the Miracle Rogue deck, and you don't care as much anymore. So anyway, yeah, Shadow Step. I love the card. I love the amount of play that it gives you. So I don't really want to see it go, but it might need to. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up going, just because as we said, 0 mana spells are just inherently, broken for them.
I think it would be good to Hall of Fame because, like I said, it gets better. Like the better cards that are printed, which is like never a good card to have around.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
so now that we've nuked every single card in in Classic and all of the busted ones, and want all of them to go away and go into the Hall of Fame or get nerfed.
Well, we'd love to keep going, but we're out of time. So, thank you all for playing along with Same, Tame, or Fame. And we're going to go ahead and close out the show after I ask Kenny one question. Hey, Kenny.
How long can this go on?
Too long. All right, so I'll give out our thanks. Thanks to Stefan L for letting us use his cover. Check him out on his channel, which is linked on our show notes. You can find that at coinconcede.com. You can write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Twitter is at coinconcede or at coinconcede. Our Facebook's coinconcede as well, after facebook.com. And we have discord.coinconcede.com, which is we do announcements, talk, chat, do whatever you can. Yeah, lots of different channels, and you can buy some merch a little bit on shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers Reganis Prime, Caleb, CB, and Fluffy.
It's so fluffy!
All right, shall we go over our shout outs here before we give our contact? I'm going to go with our guest here first, Appa. Who do you shout out?
Man, put me on the spot.
On the
I don't
spot.
know.
All right.
I guess shout out to my mom for buying me my LSAT prep book, which means I will be studying for law school. Surprise! So I'm going to be trying to do in like a year. I'm going to be trying to go to law school.
Awesome.
So, other than that, I don't know.
Well, congrats. All right, and Bonicus.
So, quick shout out to the Tier 5 podcast. They had some very, very nice words to say about me in their latest episode that had Cream Puff on it. But also, there's a podcast that I don't know how I missed listening to, but I kind of heard it pop up on some people's, just seen it pop up here and there, and it's the Blizzlet podcast. It reminds me of one of my favorite Magic the Gathering podcasts, and I listened to a bunch of it last week. I wanted to tweet about it, but I forgot to, and so shout out to those guys, Storm Rage and those guys over there, because I like that podcast a lot.
All right, Hat.
Thanks to Cream Puff for that amazing intro. Thanks to Appa for coming on the show. Appa, we miss you. Glad to have you. And
Yay.
shout out to Ferris Biscuit in the United Hearthstone League. I play my first week match against Versika Gaming from Hero Power tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. If you are listening to the show, you are a patron. I love you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you there. If you're not listening to the show, or you're listening to this on Saturday, I will probably have edited this out, so don't worry too much about it. And
Hashtag Team Hatitude.
yes, hashtag Team
Team
Hatitude if you want to cheer for me
Hatitude.
on Twitter. Yes.
Don't let me down, Hat.
Awesome.
I make no promises.
He doesn't. All right, and my shout out this week is going to be a new podcast I heard about and was kind of interested to listen to. I haven't heard it yet, but they just 33 minutes ago released episode 2. It's called Into the Wild. It's a new Wild Hearthstone podcast. So if you're interested, I guess go check them out. I don't know what they're like, so I don't know if they have, but I'm all for Wild, so go check them out. That does it. Contact info. Let's go over our guest first, Appa.
You can find me on Twitter, Appa. I think it's _Appa_HS. And then on Twitch, I stream sometimes. You should come follow me and hop in the stream because I'm fun. Twitch.tv/AppaHS.
And I will confirm it is Appa_HS for Twitter.
Cool. I got it right.
Awesome. And so Bodicus, we'll go with you.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at BodicusHS to see when I go live and am streaming. That's twitch.tv/Bodicus. I just played the first of our show matches from the last Listener League and got absolutely crushed by Smiley Chris. She destroyed me. And so I will be putting a replay up on my channel of that as soon as I can get it edited.
Awesome. And you can find Cora at Songbird_HS on Twitter, and Twitch's Songbird Cora. I think Cora just got announced that she's gonna be casting Geico Gaming. Like a showdown that they have coming up. I couldn't find the date here soon enough, so go check it out. Hat, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RidiculousHat. I'll be streaming my match against Versika tomorrow. I'll be streaming a match against Reganus Prime for the show match on Monday afternoon. And I will be streaming Thursday and Saturday nights generally, unless I have to do a last-minute schedule change, which happens an unfortunate amount lately, but hopefully that'll stop happening. And you can find me on Discord, type at RidiculousHat in any Hearthstone Discord you choose, and I am probably there.
All right. And you can find me at KCCO_gamer on Twitter, and find me in Discord, in-game, all kinds of different places. Just chat with me directly. That does it for our show, so keep calm and chive on. If you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory.
You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death.
You have triumphed. This time.
This hunt is yours.